A retirement, the Senior Bowl, and a chat with former Jets quarterback Mark Sanchez on today's episode of the Locked On Jets podcast.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Jets podcast for Friday, February 4th, 2022. I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com, and today our episode is brought to you by the Get Upside app. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. Thank you for making this show your first listen and now perhaps your first watch every day, as we are free and available on all platforms. And as of this week, that includes YouTube. So if you want to watch Locked On Jets every day, now you have that option. If you like what you hear or see, hit the subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode. And if you're on YouTube and you enjoy the show, give it a thumbs up. That helps other people find this channel and gives them the chance to enjoy Locked On Jets as well. I'm going to be speaking with Mark Sanchez in a little bit, former Jets quarterback. Really looking forward to chatting with him. But before we get to that, there is some Jets news to discuss. News broke earlier this week that guard Cameron Clark is retiring for medical reasons. Clark was one of three players the Jets drafted in the fourth round of the 2020 draft. They had hopes for him. He played tackle in college at Charlotte. I think there was hopes for him as a developmental guard. He may have had an outside chance at winning the right guard spot in training camp this year, depending on how the offseason went. But he's been advised by doctors that it just would not be wise to continue his career. He did not really play in 2020. It was kind of a developmental year for him. I think the Jets were hoping he'd take the next step forward in 2021, but he suffered a very scary injury in training camp, a spinal cord injury, and that injury will end his career. A very sad way for Cameron Clark's career to end. We send him our best as he moves into the next phase of his life. Just a very sad situation. But Cameron Clark is retiring after 2 seasons in the NFL. On Saturday, the Jets coaching staff will take part in the Senior Bowl. They're coaching one of the two teams. This is the premier college all-star game. It's where the best prospects typically go to play. The game's at Mobile, Alabama. Kickoff time is scheduled for 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And all week, the Jets coaching staff has been working with these guys. You might see the Jets coaching staff get a little bit of an advantage because they have the opportunity to put these guys through drills and see which of them may fit their system. You may think that the biggest advantage is the opportunity to work with the top prospects. I actually would argue it's probably equally, if not more important, that they get to work with some of the less heralded guys, the guys who aren't going to be really under the microscope, guys maybe who will go in the mid to late rounds. Because those players are not as complete. Their skill sets are not as complete. And when you're talking mid to late round picks, the guys who are successful, they're not always the guys who are the most talented. These are guys, again, with more limited skill sets. And when you have a more limited skill set, a lot of it comes down to, do you find a team with the right system for you that can put you in the correct role? Joe Douglas comes off the Ozzie Newsome tree. And Ozzie Newsome's famous for his scouting system. Bill Belichick has the same system. In fact, one of Belichick's famous lines is, don't tell me what a player cannot do, tell me what a player can do. Because his system and Ozzie Newsome's system and Joe Douglas's system, they define all of their roles on the team. And there are specific skill sets they look for in players. So this is a little opportunity for the Jets coaching staff to work with these guys, try and figure out who can fill a role. And again, if you're talking mid to late round picks, these are guys who are probably going to be more role players than impact guys. So I think it's a little bit of an advantage. Of course, we know teams are going to get a chance to thoroughly evaluate all of these players. So I don't want to put too much emphasis on the fact the Jets coaching staff is working this game, has had the chance to work with these guys and practice all week. But I imagine it's a little bit of an advantage. And listen, I think the Senior Bowl is definitely worth watching. There are going to be some interesting things that come out of it. If you've been watching the practices this week, they've actually been televised. And some evaluators think that the practices are at least as important, if not more important. But just keep it all in perspective. Yes, the Senior Bowl matters. You're going up against elite competition. And it's especially important for guys who are coming from smaller schools because those players typically aren't playing against top competition. So this is a chance for them to measure themselves against other draft caliber prospects. That's something they did not get a chance to do for the most part during their college careers. And you can see some players shoot up the boards as a result. You can see some players maybe hurt their stock a little bit, but keep in mind that these guys have a lot of tape. They have very long video resumes. I think sometimes what happens is people put a little bit too much emphasis on the Senior Bowl, on these events, and it'll happen again in the combine in a couple of weeks. So just don't put too much on these prospects. Enjoy the game, take your notes, but don't focus too much on it. And next week, I think we're going to focus on some college prospects. I'll try and get some guests on the show who can break down what happened at the Senior Bowl. But I don't really like taking the day-to-day temperature on players because, somebody could play a great practice on Wednesday and you could think, oh, that guy's shooting up the draft boards. Then he plays poorly on Thursday. You think, oh, he's destroyed his chances. I think when it comes to the Senior Bowl, first of all, again, keep it in perspective. This is in context with what the player does at the combine. It's in context with what the player does in interviews with teams, the medicals, the team visits. But I think more importantly, the film that they've already put on during their college career. I mean, to me, that's the most important thing. So definitely watch the game. There might be a prospect you never noticed before, a prospect you never heard of who stands out. And this could give you an opportunity to go back to the film and see what they can do. But don't put too much emphasis on it. And ultimately, if we're talking about the Senior Bowl, I want to evaluate the whole week in context. I don't like taking the temperature on a day-to-day basis. I'd rather wait until the end of the week to focus on who did well and who did not through the entirety of everything. So that's why I haven't been discussing this on a day-to-day basis on the show, but we'll try and check in next week on some of the prospects. Now, ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, I'm very excited. I'm going to get to chat with former Jets quarterback Mark Sanchez. That'll be ahead here on our show. The players the Jets coaching staff will be coaching at the Senior Bowl on Saturday all have some upside. And I want to tell you about this app, Get Upside, everyone who buys gas needs to know about. My listeners are earning cash back for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill-up cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 or $300 a year in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. Again, that's promo code TOUCHDOWN using the Get Upside app. Shortly, I'll be chatting with Mark Sanchez. One of our topics is going to be the big game next week between the Rams and the Bengals. And you should know that BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march to the Super Bowl. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports, scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live, real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. And now let's head into my discussion with former Jets quarterback Mark Sanchez. Thank you so much for taking some time to speak with me. And I mean that because I think during your career with the Jets, I'm a Jets fan. I was probably the ultimate fair weather fan, where when you guys were winning the first couple of years, it was Sanchez for president. And then the next couple of years, it was, oh, Sanchez is killing us. So I hope you can forgive me for that.
I think so. I found a place in my heart for people like you. I'm just kidding. It's all good, buddy.
So, Mark, let's begin by talking about what you're up to today. I know you're doing some work with Papa John's.
I am. So, Super Bowl Sunday, no surprise, is the number one day for pizza orders. And basically, Papa John's is going to give away free pizza for an entire year. But they've introduced this New York style crust, which I'm sure you can enjoy being a Jets fan. I know from my experience in New York, I'm a huge fan of the thin crust New York style pizza, fold it in half, dip it in the garlic sauce, and off you go. You can't go wrong with that. But basically, everybody's got their style, whether it's pizza style or your team allegiance. But Papa John's wants to know how you eat your pizza, hopefully not with a fork and knife. But whatever you do, post it on Instagram, post it on Twitter, hashtag what's your style and hashtag sweepstakes and then you enter yourself in as for a chance to win free pizza for an entire year, which is an incredible diet, if you ask me.
It sure is. And let me ask you, what made you get involved with this process? Are you just a big pizza fanatic?
Well, I do love pizza. That's my, guilty food. I know some people might think it's hot dogs, but I love a good dog, but I am a pizza guy, especially New York style. So that makes sense. And with my experience in New York, I felt like it was the perfect fit, especially with the Super Bowl coming up. Big day for pizza, big day for Papa John's.
And let me also ask what your favorite pizza topping is.
I'm a pepperoni sausage guy, but I'll eat anything as long as it's got that garlic sauce.
All right, well, Mark, you say no fork and knife, you say pepperoni sausage. I think in your pizza scouting report, good decision maker. We'll put that as one of the pros.
Thank you.
No, I want to get to some Jets related questions in a bit, but I know you're an analyst for Fox Sports, so I would love to get your take on how the teams in the Super Bowl match up with each other and how you see this game playing out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting matchup. I think with the Bengals, they love this underdog role, and you can't count out a guy like Joe Burrow. I might not agree with his glasses and his style there, but I can't argue with the way he plays quarterback, and he is one of the toughest guys I've seen. Coming off that injury from last year, standing in the pocket, taking 9 sacks in a divisional game against the number 1 team in the AFC. That is impressive. There's something to be said for that, because he stood in that pocket, took a beating, continued to deliver the ball downfield. Their defense seems to make the right play at the right time. Joe Burrow outdueled Patrick Mahomes in the second half of that game last week. That's saying something, because Mahomes is one of the best to do it in his young career, and Burrow's ascending at an incredible rate, just like Mahomes did. When you look at the Rams on the other side, it's all about experience. At the helm, obviously, Matt Stafford, been through the fire in Detroit, knows, these big games, and is only getting better in these big games. I think the biggest realization he's come to is he doesn't have to make every play. He can delegate some of that big play responsibility to his other teammates, especially a guy like OBJ. I think that acquisition was huge for them. Remember, the Bucs were in on OBJ. The Packers were in on OBJ. I think if they could go back and rewrite history, they would rather him be on one of those squads to try and make a run like the Rams have done. When they first got him, it was, just icing on the cake. Maybe he can help us a little bit. Maybe a gadget guy. We'll see what he's still got left in the tank. And then he became a necessity as soon as Robert Woods went down. So he's been a huge addition. And Matt Stafford bringing him along with McVay, with Kevin O'Connell, who was a former Jet, by the way, former Jet backup quarterback. Listen, they got a great squad, and that defense, man, they got a game record in Aaron Donald. Ramsey's going to have to play really well. He had 2 huge games against Evans and Deebo Samuel. Both of those guys had their share of catches and deep ball catches. So he's going to have to tighten up, I think, against Jamar Chase. That's going to be a good matchup for him. But I think experience, plays a big factor. McVay's been there. He's seen it before. They're playing at home. I think if I had to pick a winner, I'd go with the Rams, but I hate betting against Joe Burrow.
Now, Mark, I'd like to turn our attention to the Jets right now. And you have a very interesting perspective, because you're one of the few people out there who knows exactly what Zach Wilson is going through as a young quarterback in this city with this franchise. Can you speak about what it's like being a young quarterback developing in New York, where you have fools like me breaking down your every move and, you're not playing well. Oh, terrible. Talk a little bit about what it's like.
Gosh, it is. It's a fickle world, and that's okay. It's you got to realize what you're signing up for. And I think I had a great background because of being at USC when there wasn't a pro football team. We had a ton of media attention and scrutiny, not nearly what it was in New York, but it was a good warm up, a good preseason, if you will, to get to somewhere like the Big Apple. And then you just got to realize that there's always going to be scrutiny on the field, off the field. It comes with the territory. You try and keep blinders on, and people are like, well, you just got to ignore it. You got to ignore it. But you have to understand, the president of the United States has like a chief of staff, obviously, and press secretary. And so they're going to brief him before he goes into a press conference. So he kind of has the pulse, if he didn't already, of the nation, of what's going on. Right. So we have that with the Jets as well. Before you go to the podium every week, you talk to, at the time, Bruce Spade or Megan Gilmore. But basically they would kind of give you all the information in all these articles and kind of rip through some of the headlines. And here's what's going on with so-and-so and blah, blah, blah. See, it's impossible to block it out. I know people say that, just like, don't look. Well, now you got these phones. I mean, the Twitter stuff, the Instagram stuff, that was still up and coming when I was being drafted. Zach's got a lot on his plate. And, obviously the most important thing is his development. I think, after the injury, during that time, you got a chance to really watch, saw Flacco, saw Mike White, and that whole, ascension and whatever you want to call it after. But I mean, the guy played his butt off for a game. You got to see what that's like. You got to see the same people praising him, crushing Mike White right after. So it was almost like you got to take a step back and really analyze how this thing works. I think, that boded well for him. But listen, he's got to continue to improve, work on himself, understand that this is a long process. This is a marathon, even though everybody wants results immediately in this instant gratification society. You just got to take your time, be patient, trust your process, and then trust Joe Douglas to get a bunch of good players around you. They have some more draft picks coming up, so they're going to have to hit on those draft picks, and we'll see what happens. But listen, he's a great kid. He's got a ton of talent. Sky's the limit for him.
Do you think it's easier to be in a situation like you were in, where there was a lot of supporting talent, but there were also expectations for the team to win? Or do you think it's better to be in the situation Zach's in, where maybe their team's not as talented, but there's not as much pressure because people aren't really expecting them to be in the playoffs year one?
They both have their pros and cons. Sorry for the political answer, but when you're on a great team and less maybe is expected of you personally, the team can overcome some mistakes by the quarterback because of your run game, because of your special teams, because of your defense. And you can learn lessons while you get a W. In Zach's situation, he can't afford to make many mistakes, because one turnover and they might not be able to recover from that. The other team could just take over the game because of their lack of experience and lack of talent at the time. So you can get yourself into bad habits of trying to do too much. I mean, a perfect example is a guy like Matt Stafford early in his career threw a ton of interceptions because he had to throw the ball 40 to 50 times a game. That's just the way it was going to happen, or they wouldn't win. They didn't have a chance to win if he wasn't playing really well and throwing the ball a lot. Zach's in a similar situation. So until there's a supporting cast like Matt Stafford is benefiting from now, I mean, the guy's in the Super Bowl, still the same player, more experienced, but the same player, more or less. He's going to need to learn that it takes time, and that when you get in a situation where you can delegate, some of that playmaking ability, that is a real luxury. And until you have that understanding, playing it closer to the vest, a little tighter to the vest, might not be a bad thing, because you can't afford, a catastrophic turnover. And it's tough when you're trying to make every play.
Well, Mark wants you to eat pizza, but if you can't grab a pizza right now, let me suggest an alternative, Built Bar. These are protein bars, but they don't taste like protein bars. They are absolutely delicious. They taste like candy bars because they're covered in 100% real chocolate. In fact, most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. And there are so many delicious flavors to choose from. There's coconut almond, there's peanut butter brownie, there's raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and many more. In fact, Built is always coming up with new limited time flavors, so check out Built.com often to see what's new. And while you're at Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. It's one word with no space, LOCKED, number 1, number 5, for 15% off at Built, BUILT.com. Now let's return to my chat with former Jets quarterback Mark Sanchez. Looking back at your career, the Jets obviously had a couple great seasons, years 1, year 2, and then after that, the next couple of years didn't go as well. Why do you think the team was unable to sustain that early success?
I think, my third year statistically was my best year. Rushed for a bunch of touchdowns, threw a bunch of touchdowns. That was my best year, and I felt like we were going in the right direction. I think, we made a change at offensive coordinator, which makes it tough. You got to learn a new language, essentially, and had 2 different coordinators towards the tail end of my career there. I think we played that free agency game pretty hard. And some guys pan out, some guys don't for whatever reason. They're talented players. Maybe the situation, the offensive scheme, whatever, doesn't quite translate from where they're coming from. And I think after that, we just, when it's a constant carousel and revolving door of talent and coaches, it makes it tough to get any continuity and consistency, because you're kind of starting from scratch every year. So that made it difficult towards the end. It was an unfortunate early exit, in my opinion. But, I went on and got to do some fun stuff in some other cities and play a little ball for a couple other ball clubs and made great relationships. But I'm grateful to the Jets. I thought our success was incredible, man. We had a couple of really good veteran teams early on, and looking back, that taught me a lot about football, the NFL, business, life. It was a special run.
I just have one more question, and it's a question I've always wondered, and you can answer this diplomatically if you'd like. If you'd like to answer it undiplomatically, feel free. But how pissed off were you when they traded for Tebow?
I think in any other situation, Tim and I would have been good buddies because we have very similar values. We work hard. He was a great teammate, but in that situation, I just think it was a difficult spot for both of us because he's trying to play and start, and I'm trying to play and start. I had some success earlier, been to a couple championship games, felt like I was the established guy. And when you bring in a guy who has Tim's background and Tim's success, and credit to him for having that, it makes it a difficult situation for both players. And then couple that with the market we were in and the fan base that Tim has, and deservedly so. He's one of the best college football players to ever play. He's had some incredible success in the NFL. So it just makes that quarterback room difficult to navigate. And it was really too bad. I know, Tim, wished he would have played more and had more success. I wish I would have had more success when that happened. And, some acquisitions work, some don't. Unfortunately, that one probably wasn't the best.
Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to speak today.
You got it, buddy.
That's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and thanks to Mark Sanchez for stopping by. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to it. If you're on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. If you're here on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the Senior Bowl, and we'll be back next week to talk more Jets.